Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And one announcement before I introduce my next guest. I have unfortunate news that our 2025 season of Play Noir has to be postponed. Unfortunately, the venue we planned on performing in is not quite ready. It's still undergoing renovations and will not be ready in November. So we're going to push it to spring of 2026. My sincerest apologies for the playwrights that did submit, but it'll give us more time to focus and really sift through the plays that we received, over 160 of them, to really make a fair assessment and choose what's best going to curate the evening for the 3-4 week run that we do. All right. So without further ado, my guest today is a playwright and veteran filmmaker whose credits include A Perfect Christmas, Strictly Sexual, and Chump Change. The world premiere of his play Parallel Process opens at the Odyssey Theatre in Los Angeles September 19th and runs through October 26th. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Kohner Zuckerman. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, veteran filmmaker. Now, is this your first go at a play, or are there other plays under your belt? And then I want to unpack everything from there.
When I was in 9th grade, I was in the theater.
Okay, all right. Did you write anything?
School plays, but
okay, all right.
I didn't write it.
Go ahead and bring that microphone up a little closer to you. There you go. Yeah. Okay, so all right. Well, let's unpack this. So this is your first go, but so what made you go from filmmaking to playwright, and then why Parallel Process as a play and not a film? And you don't have to answer those in any particular order.
Well, I wanted to transition out of producing. I made that decision about 9 years ago.
Okay.
And I thought I wanted to get into writing and directing. So I wanted to go back to acting class so that I could relearn the language of the theater, so that I could understand better how to direct, how to work with actors. And it ended up improving my writing and my understanding of drama and conflict. So I said to myself, why not write a play?
Okay.
I kept seeing scenes over and over again in acting class, and because I have a very short attention span,
okay,
about 90% of them I would want to fall asleep on.
The scenes that you were watching, or
the scenes I was watching?
Okay, all right. And so, what made you just sit down and like, I'm gonna write the best scene that I possibly can? And what was that process like? Did you start writing scenes, or did you sit there and say, I've got this concept for Parallel Process and I'm gonna just start writing that?
I had a concept for Parallel Process. However, the first draft is not at all like the final draft.
They never are.
The first draft had nothing to do with the Vietnam War, for example. And I wrote the first draft in 4 days. I just had a inspiration. And I was pretty amazed. I wrote about 67 pages in 1 or 2 sittings. And I remember going to acting class and telling my acting teacher, Art Cohan, that I had done that. And I was proud of myself.
Absolutely, sure. So wait, so you said you got a first draft done, 60-something pages, but it had nothing to do with the Vietnam War?
No, it didn't. Somehow it evolved into that, I think, after I was speaking, or while I was speaking with Harry Hamlin, a friend of mine who I wanted to be in the play. It all came to me, the whole story, in 10 seconds. And it shifted from a story about a psychologist dealing with a serial killer to a psychologist dealing with his older brother. And now the character in the first draft, the lead character, is only about 40, and so now he's 68.
So what was the catalyst to make you make that change?
I think it was looking at Harry somehow and understanding and wondering what that generation went through.
Okay.
And it all came together somehow, and I can't tell you exactly how, but it did.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how those things kind of transpire when it comes to writing. So did you pretty much start from scratch then at that point, or are there certain things that you still kept even though the concept completely changed?
I did keep certain things from the first draft. And from there, started working on an outline, and I worked with a guy named Matt Ritchie, who is very influential in LA theater scene. He's very prolific, and he writes himself, he acts himself, he directs, but he also helps others through a coaching business. And working with Matt helped solidify the first draft, and he even helped me some with the first draft, just writing it. But it was me like telling Matt this is what I want to do, and sending him pages, and then him spending a lot of time with it, and then sending his thoughts back. And out of that came a really good first draft about 2 years ago, and then for the last 2 years I've refined it with the help of others. It's been a team effort.
Okay.
I did a lot of interviewing of Vietnam veterans, especially one named Louis Finocchio, who gave me a lot of stuff. He was a first lieutenant in Vietnam, and this story is about what happens to a first lieutenant in Vietnam through the retelling of what happened by two brothers who haven't seen each other in 6 years and who have been estranged for most of their life.
I want to stick with your experience in playwriting in your first endeavor with it. How much did any amount of your filmmaking come into play with this as well, as far as your writing process goes? And then did you have a learning curve of having to realize, like, wait, I'm not writing a film, I'm writing a play, so I've got too many scenes happening within a 5-minute span?
I think that my writing style was always more Hemingway than Faulkner, and okay. I started in journalism. I wrote for newspapers quite early on and magazines, and had a sense of dialogue. Never liked dialogue to be too long-winded, and so transitioning from that type of milieu into the theater wasn't that difficult for me, because I like really sharp and witty dialogue, and I had read a lot of playwrights. Most importantly to me were David Mamet and John Patrick Shanley.
Okay.
But in particular Mamet, and I felt always an affinity there between the way I write or try to write and the way that he writes.
Sure. So I would imagine that journalism helped you out quite a bit in the realm of get to the point, be sharp, and you don't have to overwrite. So in that regard, does that mean that editing's been a little bit easier for you? It's easier for you to, like, well, I don't need that, I can get rid of that, or did you have issues saying, I really, really need this? It's as some beginning playwrights, it's hard for them to kill their darlings, if you will.
Yeah, in many of the films that I was involved with as a producer, I did a lot of editing.
Okay.
So I would sit behind the editor's shoulder a lot, and I realized I had a real skill there. My skill is in editing specifically, and that means editing manuscripts, scripts, screenplays, but also picture. And I realized I had a good feel for it really after we did this movie Strictly Sexual, and I was forced behind the director-producer's back, and that film became the #1 watched film on Hulu for 8 years. So it was very popular, and I think in large part because of the editing. And it's easier for me to edit than initiate a draft.
Fair enough.
So,
what you mentioned a little bit ago, just 2 years now. What's been the whole entire process of this play?
Well, it started out with me going to acting class and being bored with many of the scenes because I have like an ADD type personality.
Sure.
And then sitting down and having an inspiration and writing 67 pages of something, and then from there just a lot of refining and workshopping at the Beverly Hills Playhouse with actors there and getting feedback that way, and working with development people like Matt and Fiona and Fernanda, who's also been helping me a lot. And it's also been with different actors, and when you have actors that are committed to a role, that role changes a little bit in certain ways. So for a while, Harry Hamlin, who still really wants to play Bobby, but is shooting a show when we're opening, he was playing Dennis. Did I say Bobby? He was playing Dennis, the psychologist, and he was attached to it, but then this show of his came up and he couldn't move it and I couldn't move it.
Sure.
And so I found Alan McRae, who's playing Dennis now, who's fabulous and brings so much to it. But when you get new actors, you tend to rewrite a little bit for that actor.
So are we talking about a 2-year refining process, or are we talking a little bit longer than that?
It's been about a 2.5-year refinement process, correct?
Okay. So, because I want to get into the process of you taking pages into your class, I'm curious, what were the scenes that people were bringing in that made you so bored? Are we talking about from other plays? Or are we talking
from
about
other plays?
Okay.
Most plays to me are boring, except those written by a select few.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Sure.
I just have a low attention span, and I appreciate the sharp dialogue, real naturalism versus surrealism. So I get bored when things are too romantic or too farcical.
I'm going to ask you this question, and it's not to insult anybody's ability or talent in your class, but is there a possibility it's the acting and not the writing?
I've been to a lot of plays and musicals throughout my life, and I was pretty much bored with most of what I saw. There's only a couple that come to mind now that I love, like Annie Get Your Gun and Guys and Dolls.
Sure, okay.
But the others I was sort of bored with because I have a very specific taste. I am very much into naturalism.
All right. Do you find that Parallel Process is a very naturalistic play?
That's how I wrote it. I hope it comes across that way. We don't have any major special effects or so.
Well, you're also directing, so I would like to think that naturalism is going to come across with your guidance as well.
I hope so.
So, then you're not performing in it, right?
No.
Okay, so how do you...
I'm not a great actor.
Well, but we don't know that because you just went into an acting class, so you could prove us all wrong.
Yeah, well, unless something happens to one of the leads and I'm forced in there.
And now I lost my train of thought. I was going to go somewhere with that. What about your acting has helped with your writing?
Learning about the perspective that each character has in a scene has helped me to realize how important conflict and drama and different perspectives and different voices are. It really sharpened my understanding of the craft. It especially helped my understanding with conflict.
So do you find, on that note, do you find that there's any conflict between you directing your own play?
Others have suggested that.
That you do or you don't?
That it would be a conflict. However, I got into this wanting to be a writer-director.
Okay.
If I wasn't directing it, it wouldn't be interesting to me because I wanted to make sure that my vision got across, and I have a very specific vision. I was reluctant to turn that over to somebody else.
Sure, but I'll play devil's advocate to that, and you might discover that they might find things that you weren't even aware of that you had written, which sometimes happens, or they might find another angle that, oh my God, I didn't even realize that.
That obviously happens, and it happens a lot in rehearsal with actors, which is great, and with my assistant director, Cora Altman. And it could have happened with the director. However, from my experience in the movie business, once you turn things over to a director, it's the director's ball
ain't that
game.
the truth?
Yeah, I didn't want that to happen.
Well, playwriting's a different animal. The good thing is a playwright has a lot more say than I think a lot of playwrights even realize. You know, especially through the Dramatists Guild and the Playwrights Bill of Rights. There's a lot of stipulation that you have the right to pull the plug at any point. You know, as a playwright.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I can pull the plug on myself.
Yeah, which I don't necessarily recommend. So on that note, since you're directing, how much collaboration are you doing with your cast? How much leeway are you giving them to really have a say in their characters? You know, saying, well, you know, look, from my perspective as the actor in this character, I don't believe you'd say it this way, or I'm feeling a little jumbled. Do you give them that leeway and freedom to voice those things? Or it's like, no, this is exactly how it is. This is how it has to be. This is how I wrote it. And this is how it's going to stay.
I give them that opportunity, and I think it's always smart to let actors try doing it the way that they're feeling it. And oftentimes that's the best way. But there are other times where it's not, and when I feel it's not, then I speak up. But I feel I'm very collaborative on one hand. On the other hand, my actors might tell you that I'm dictatorial. So I don't know yet, and we're doing a movie right now called 2 Weeks that is about the 2 weeks before we open, and maybe we'll get some perspectives on how the actors are feeling about my directing.
Sure. Well, hopefully you'll watch that after you guys open and close.
Yes.
So I will get into the changes that happened while you were workshopping in your acting class, but I want to know if there have there been any changes since you started a rehearsal process?
Yes, there have been changes in the structure of the story through the process of workshopping it. So there have been changes in the structure of the play based on workshopping it with actors, and that means doing table reads as well as workshopping it in class.
Right.
Getting the pacing right and hitting the right notes at certain times in the play, we had to switch around things, which was hard for me to wrap my head around. But when enough people tell you that you got to do something, you end up, giving that a lot of thought, and I have had a lot of experience in the movie business, which is very collaborative.
Sure.
And I know enough that when 10 people tell you that you've got a tail, that you better turn around and check your ass. So that experience, I think, has helped me to appreciate good notes and suggestions when I hear them.
When you say the structure change, in what aspect? Are we talking like the scene order, or just like, hey, look, this needs to happen a little sooner, or all of the above?
It's a one act, so I would say that yes, all of the above. Certain parts that came later are coming earlier. Certain arcs and stories are coming earlier than later, or later rather than earlier, so that we keep the tension going.
Okay.
And that was something that I wasn't aware of because I wasn't objective enough. But going through the table reads with, wonderful folks that were willing to help me out, and then having people listen too that were there, it couldn't be more helpful. So that's been a part of how I work for a long time, including the movie business. I'm like to hear a lot of feedback, and it's almost like, marketing toothpaste. And I tell writers in the movie business that if 7 out of 10 people don't feel your script is very, very good, then it's time to go back to the drawing board. It's not until that time that it would be safe to send out.
How much changed doing those workshops? And not just as far as like the story goes, which we've already established, but how much as far as like the characters go? Because I imagine those scenes, I could be wrong. Are you, each scene, if you bring us that scene one in 1 week, and then you bring that same scene with some rewrites the next week, I'm assuming that it's not the same actor playing, or is it?
When we do the workshopping, it's not always the same actor. Yeah.
So do you find that because actor A performed at week 1 and then actor B performed at week 2, did you find discoveries? Were there really like other things that just really leapt out because you've got 2 different performances going on where it's like, wow, that's a perspective I didn't come up with? And did that change your story at all?
The actors, not so much. What changed it was advice from 2 teachers over at Beverly Hills Playhouse. One, Art Cohan, who taught the intermediate day class that I was in for many years. And then the other one being Alan, I'm forgetting his last name, Barton, who is a fantastic playwright himself, and he's the owner of the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And the notes I received from them were particularly helpful.
Did you use them all, or did you say, I'll take this one and leave that one out?
I used about 80%, 85% of their notes.
Okay.
And Alan was gracious enough to even come to a reading we did for Vietnam vets.
Oh, wow.
And his notes are usually spot on.
How many vets have heard this or read it so far, just out of curiosity?
I would say about 10 or so vets have been involved with the process of development, especially, like I said, Lewis.
Sure. And
Lewis has been from the beginning, almost.
And what's been their perspective so far?
The perspective of the vets is interesting because each one has something different to say. What I was most concerned about is the authenticity
Sure.
of the stories that were being told. And on that, I got consensus. On other things, they were sometimes at odds with themselves and with me. They had a focus on PTSD, for example, that they felt really needed to come across more. My answer to that was, this play isn't just about PTSD.
Okay.
So a lot of the vets really want it known how PTSD has affected their lives, which we touch on greatly in this play. But it's not the only thing that's touched on. So a lot of the vets wanted more of that.
How many characters?
There's 6 characters in the play. There are 3 main characters and 3 very minor characters.
And how was that approach, especially writing a play with 6 characters on your first go and keeping everything in track? I mean, during that whole process, as far as the characters go, are you writing notes? Are you tracking things, or are you just or did you just free write? Well, obviously, I'm going to say the first draft, but it's changed immensely. So, how did you approach the rewrites? Once you got those notes.
I used to have more characters.
Okay.
And I had to cut those when I understood the realities of the stage. The 3 characters that are minor just sort of come in and out, but they all play very important roles in the play.
Okay.
And I think the challenge there is just finding the right actors for the part. We had to do a lot of auditioning to get the right folks for those 3 roles.
Okay. Because I'm really fascinated by this, especially as a first-time playwright. What do you think the biggest obstacle you had to overcome was?
The biggest obstacle to overcome, in my experience, was finding a theater, believe it or not.
Okay.
I knew that getting a movie done was next to impossible, but I didn't realize that doing a play in LA was next to impossible as well. So, believe it or not, it took 9 months to find the Odyssey Theatre, which I'm finally very, very grateful for that we landed it. That was one of the biggest obstacles. And the other is dealing with equity, the union, which, from my perspective, is hindering their members more than helping. And then, of course, the money that it costs to do all this. And you're lucky if you break even. Lucky in capital letters on the marquee of the theater if you break even in a play. And so I didn't know all that getting into it.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate to that as well, because the one thing about, and I'm sure that you'll agree with this, the one thing about playwriting is you have an opportunity to make your money back, or at least break even. And in film, good luck, especially if it's a short, So, I think with promotion and marketing, everything like that, give or take how much is involved with the production as far as how minimal you are. But I think that you have a good opportunity to at least break even, if not make some. Now, going equity, that's a whole different story. But rather than, when we'll get into the whole production aspect, because there's some things that I want to discuss about that just from the experiences that, from what I understand from this conversation and other things before we got together. I want to know about the obstacles of being a first-time playwright, and what did you have to overcome in that regard? Did you find that you had habits that you had to break, because you wrote in journalism, and that's I got to get out of that habit, or, again, like I said, as a filmmaker, or as when I work with first-time playwrights that are on the younger side, they'll have 7 different locations in the first 5 minutes of a play, where it's just back in the day, we just kept one single location, and wrote everything around there. So did you find that did you overwrite at all?
In the beginning, I definitely overwrote.
Which is not a bad thing, but...
No, but that came, you're right, from my experience in films. So that did become, in the very beginning, an obstacle, which I think I quickly overcame once I realized it. In terms of the other obstacles, one of them for me was getting people to take me seriously as a playwright.
Sure.
And that means folks in acting class or people in general. Because I'd never done it before, they didn't know how it was going to be.
Sure.
So convincing actors to be in it and all that was very difficult at first. But as they saw the writing and felt the themes resonating, it became easier and easier. But in the beginning, it was not so easy.
Sure, sure. And I just want to clarify, not for just for you, but for the listeners as well, that I always encourage overwriting, especially the first draft, as we would call it, vomiting on the page. Just get it all out. That's what I got to say.
I would like to reinforce that.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to get all your ideas out, and then just figure out where this. You got to get that story going.
Well, I learned that you have to have the courage to write something that's horrible, and I learned that about 3.5, 4 years ago when I was working on a script. And I usually work with a partner or a writing assistant. Okay. And I learned that you have to be okay with throwing out a bunch of SHIT.
Right, yeah.
And eventually, through that process, you come up with something that's kind of good, and then you get to good and very good and excellent. So that, for me, was new. I think that I avoided writing scripts and avoided writing for the theater because I didn't have the courage to sit down and do that. And I was too self-conscious. I was too critical. And this process has made it softer for me. It's made it less intimidating because I know that writing is rewriting. I knew that before, but man, do I know it now.
Sure.
I mean, this play has gone through probably 50 drafts.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What made you overcome that fear or that intimidation?
Understanding that that's almost the rule when it comes to writing, and understanding that everybody goes through that has made it more comfortable for me. Before, I didn't really realize that. I felt that I had to be brilliant right off the bat. And getting that support and feedback from others that, hey, yeah, this is okay and this is what we do, has helped a lot.
Why a one act and why not a longer version, just out of curiosity?
Well, this play takes place in one day, and it happens to be a very difficult day for the lead.
Okay.
Everything kind of comes together, so the chickens come home to roost, so to speak, in this one day. And I like stakes. I like stories with very high stakes and organic stakes. For example, going back years and years ago to a sitcom called All in the Family, the stakes were built in the sense that Archie, the owner of the house, is a conservative, and his son-in-law is not. His son-in-law is almost a hippie, but they're forced into the same situation together because the daughter says, we need to let him live with me because he's getting his degree and he's going to have his PhD, but in the meantime, he won't have any money. And Archie says, okay. So now these two guys are forced into a situation organically. And for me, I always like that type of reality.
Sure.
And so in Parallel Process, we have that. We have a timeline, a ticking time bomb, so to speak.
Right. You mentioned that you had a hard time being taken seriously as a playwright. Did you find that when you were bringing your pages into class that some of your classmates were kind of like not taking you seriously, or were they very receptive and encouraging? I
think at times when I got into the advanced acting class, there were difficulties in convincing folks to do it. When I was in intermediate, it was less difficult. I think more of the curiosity from others was when I was workshopping it, and I would be workshopping it sometimes with really good actors and really good directors, and I felt like I wasn't part of that club.
Interesting. Why do you think
like that feeling? Because I haven't had as much experience with the theater, because I'm not a working actor, I'm not a working director, and they all knew that. And so I felt excluded a little bit from some of those conversations, and I didn't like that.
Do you feel that? Do you feel like it was coming from a lack of control?
I think that people sometimes mistake my desire to collaborate with a lack of initiative when it's not. And when they mistake that, I think they're misunderstanding me. There are some actors and some folks that really like black and white thinking and want to know this is how you're going to do it. But that's not how I work. I like to hear feedback, and I work slower than most because I want everything to be just right. But a lot of times there are actors and others who really don't work in that way, and they want the director to be more authoritative.
I'm speechless because. So here's where I'm gonna state this, and that the issues with them, not you. If you're coming from a collaborative aspect, and so my guess is they've never been in a position where they're actually working on a play where the playwright's there and the director's there, and that the whole entire process is a collaborative issue, And I want to reiterate again, and I'll first of all I'll post it as I always do with these episodes. I want to encourage you to read the Playwright's Bill of Rights. There's so much in there that you have every right to be involved. You have a right. You have a say in the casting. You have a say in anything. They cannot change your work and things like that. So it just sounds like the people that you're working with don't really have a high grasp of what it's like to be in a professional theater setting. And that's not to say that they haven't done plays, but maybe they haven't done an original work.
Well, I would say that I'm speaking of folks that I was workshopping it with a couple of years ago.
Sure.
And I don't know if that was the case. They were also very accomplished, a lot of these folks. And so they had their own ideas on how to make things work. And maybe their ideas were better, but they were different than mine.
Sure.
And because I didn't have experience, they probably felt that they were better ideas because they had worked in the theater for many years. So there were some guys that had been acting and directing for 30 plus years or 20 plus years, and then they think, of course, that I know better than David. David's never even done this before. So that's the vibe sometimes I would get.
So is that where the quote unquote the idea of lack of initiation came from, where they just think, oh, he
No, I always had a hard time just staring at a blank computer screen. So when I was speaking about initiation, I felt earlier in my life I was much better at editing someone else's work or editing my own work than I was at initiating it. Initiating something for me was always very difficult. In fact, when I was a journalist and working for magazines, I would often drink a lot, and I thought that helped me to relax and give me the courage to write something, which I had to overcome, of course, because now I don't drink at all. But that's what I meant when I was speaking about initiating something. And another thing is when I'm directing, it's to be thought of differently. I want to hear the actors do it their way first.
Sure.
Because maybe their way is different, or their interpretation of the scene is different than mine. And all I get is fantastic knowledge by doing that. And I think that's difficult or confusing for some actors.
So you didn't have any problems initiating conversation or ideas during the rehearsal process or the workshopping process, and they involved you in that feedback, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I misunderstood. So I thought that you didn't have much involvement in that.
I did, and I do continue to do that, and I invite opinions constantly, and I think that can also be frustrating for people because I'm asking them questions, and they're like, well, you're the director, what do you think? And I'm like, I want to know what you think sometimes. So that sometimes happens, but it ends up working out really well.
Sure.
But some people just aren't used to that pushing, and I'm a pusher. What are you trying to say here? I will say to the actors, do you know what this means? And a lot of times they don't. And I say, well, actually. And then they're like, oh, now I get it.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. So when you were workshopping this at Beverly Hills Playhouse, at this point, you had other people directing.
I was directing it. Really, I wasn't, because in Beverly Hills Playhouse, you don't really let others direct. The actors are supposed to direct themselves. I could have if I wanted to, but I didn't really feel comfortable doing that because it was already really nice of them to go up and do it. And then to have me directing them when I didn't really have that much experience, I thought was not founded at the time.
Sure. And I do want to be clear that and I'm not trying to undermine anybody's theater experience at Beverly Hills Playhouse, or when I said the issues with them. It's one thing to direct a continual something that's already been established, to continually direct something like, we'll use John Patrick Shanley, like Danny and the Deep Blue Sea, or Buffalo. Oh my God, what am I drawing a blank on?
Buffalo 88?
No, I was talking the Mammoth
movie.
I was talking the Mammoth play. American Buffalo.
Oh yeah.
It's one thing to direct and collaborate on something that's already been established. It's another thing to create or collaborate with a playwright with their first work, where it's the world premiere, where they're actually in the room and they're actually, obviously I don't want to say there's a hierarchy, but the playwright's there, and then the actor should be going to the director, and then the director can always go to the playwright, but
You hit the nail on the head, I think, there, James, because it is James, right?
Yes,
I didn't
yes,
fuck
it is.
that
No,
one
that's
up.
all right. Trust me,
As
if
I
you've
get
been in the room
older-
for as many times as I've effed up somebody's names, at least the pronunciation.
With
my
all the
listeners know that.
trazodone I take at night, I'm literally forgetting the name of my girlfriend when it comes in. Thanks for the coffee.
We'll edit that one out.
Anyway,
go ahead.
you hit the nail on the head. It's a first-time play, and as one of my actors noted, when you're doing a play for the first time, you're constantly rewriting it. Whereas if you're putting up something that has already gone through this process, have a better idea of what we're doing. So yes, and I commend all these folks that are working with me, because that's what's going on. It hasn't been up before.
So how long ago did the rehearsal process, the actual rehearsal process, start? Once you got to the Odyssey, you knew you had a venue. How long ago did those rehearsals start?
Once we had the venue, the rehearsals began in July.
Okay.
And started really heating up in August. So in July, there was some readings for Vietnam vets. There was some table reads. And then once we got to August, we started rehearsal. And then I lost one of my actors.
I was going to get
And
into
I
that.
had to
We'll hold tight on that.
hire another
We'll get into that one in a second, because that one's written down here. Because I want to talk about the production aspects in a second. So you're talking July, and then you actually start mostly table reads and whatnot, some readings for it. So were there changes at that point? Were changes made? Once the actual rehearsals started, the heating up ones in August, were there still changes being made?
Yes, there were changes made, and they are continuing to be made, but they're getting less and less and less now, thankfully.
What are the changes that are being? What are the latest changes that have been made recently?
Mostly just lines being cut for the most part. A few line changes here and there.
Okay.
When Eric Pierpoint was playing Bobby, he was more Texas, because in that version the brothers were from Texas. Now they're from St. Louis to accommodate Daryl Larson, who has got an amazing array of experience in the theater and in film. So that has happened, but also through the process of figuring out how to stage,
Right.
there have been line cuts and so forth. And Eric Pierpoint was really good with that, and he made so many good suggestions that we ended up using.
Sure.
So it's you don't really get a sense until you're staging it, and we haven't even had the theater set up yet.
Right.
Putting it in this weekend, but that will even change things further, I think.
Now, I want to make sure I didn't mishear that. You said you changed the location?
We changed where the brothers came from. We had to do that because originally the brothers, this story is about two brothers.
Right.
They grew up in Dallas in the first version, and in this version they grew up in St. Louis. And that's because we had an actor change.
Expand on that, because I'm really kind of fascinatedly confused about why changing an actor means change in the location of the play.
Because I'm very much into naturalism and realism, I don't like to use accents. And even though actors can do it, when I'm watching film sometimes, it drives me nuts when they slip into their original tongue. And I don't want to deal with that if I can help it. And because Daryl isn't naturally talking in this sort of Southern style as Eric was, we all figured we should maybe come up with something just more along the lines of both Alan and Daryl's style, which is more Midwest.
Okay, I understand that now. Okay, just wanted to make sure I'm like, because I've never heard that before, but I can understand that take.
It's not all that relevant in the play. If it were much more relevant than that, we would have stuck with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it's an interesting choice and something that, as happens every episode, it just hasn't. Something like that has never come up. So, which leads me to the next thing that has never come up is, at least not yet, scrambling, losing an actor and having to scramble to recast and get them up to speed, which is probably easier than something more major, but let's talk about that and that process and that experience and what happened.
I had heard that in LA theater, losing an actor is very common because there's often roles offered to an actor while they're in the process of rehearsing a play that are in film or television that pay a lot more and give the actor much more exposure. So that is quite common, I had heard. However, I hadn't gone through it before, and we lost Eric a couple weeks ago and had to really scramble. And one of the challenges there is the age of the actor needed. So the guys in my play, the brothers, are late 60s, early 70s. And to find actors that are that age in LA is difficult because most who are that age have become famous already or they've dropped out of the business. Right. So if the play was about guys in their 40s, it would have been a snap almost to find the next person. But in this case, it wasn't. So we lost about a week of rehearsal and promo and so forth because of this abrupt shift.
Does that allow for more promotion now that there's a shift to where now we're like, hey, we gotta pump this up even more because we had this, I don't want to call it a tragedy, but, for lack of a better word.
Well, I would like to think that people are tracking the play, but in reality, I'm tracking the play, and those who are in it think it's their biggest thing in the world right now, but in reality, it's a play in LA, and I don't think that people are giving it that much thought, frankly. So, in terms of the controversy, I think that there is some because we had some equity actors because of Eric, and then I dropped them because we didn't need to be equity and because there were creative differences and other things that were going on. So there's some opportunity for promotion around that, but not necessarily good promotion, but who knows? Didn't Donald Trump say, there's no such thing as bad publicity, or was that somebody else and he just kind of...
I want to say that's been going on for I don't know. He's been around for a long time, so it's hard to say. So wait, did I understand this correctly? So was Eric the reason you were equity?
Yes, Eric was the only reason that we had to be equity, and because Eric was equity, I accepted another actress who has a very minor role who was equity because I thought she was great for the role. When we learned that she wasn't that great for the role, I ended up having to let her go and didn't realize that because she's equity, you apparently have to give someone 2 weeks' notice and send them a formal letter. I mean, it's a nightmare. We're talking 99-seat theater in LA.
Right.
So that, I think, was challenging probably for that actress and probably for Eric in some degree because I think he had an affinity for that actress, which was one of the reasons I think he quit. Because even though she only has 5 pages for some reason, he felt like defending her. But what are you going to do?
The drama of theater.
Everybody wants to be a hero, myself included.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm the only hero in this play, in this tragedy.
Yeah, well,
in this disaster.
Well, it does revolve around
this
Vietnam.
catastrophe.
Okay, so you dropped the equity aspect.
Yeah.
Now, was there no 99-seat waiver, or did you...
It's not all that great. It's not that much different.
Right.
There is some leeway, but yeah.
So you have to give them 2 weeks. Or did he have to give you 2 weeks?
I don't know how that works. That's a good
Exactly.
question. But there are legitimate reasons for letting someone go, and I had them. So that really wasn't the problem. The problem was that people got mad because people feel in their equity that they shouldn't be ever let go. It's just a vibe. And equity is going to have to modify for the times. It took a long time for the Writers Guild to modify and to understand that a lot of folks are making lower budget films and we need to lower our minimum for those. Equity in LA hasn't gotten there, but they're going to have to if they want to survive.
Well, the one thing that I would have to say with equity, and I don't know if you have this problem as well, is like, I mean, how many of your other actors are SAG or after SAG, or even at Universal, the whatever that guild is, that when you have, if you have an equity actor, you have to pay all the sister unions as well.
That's right. Which in film, yes.
Yeah. So I did an equity play once, and thank God only 2 of us were SAG, because otherwise I would have had to pay them all. That's why I avoid doing union, because back in the day, I think they finally dropped it. I could be completely wrong, but they wanted it to be minimum wage for rehearsal and production. So I'm doing a show with 12 actors, and let's just say minimum wage was $10 an hour, and then I'm doing 4 weeks of rehearsal, 5 weeks of rehearsal. I mean, do the math. I can't. Who's going to come pay $50 for a 36-seat theater? Nobody's going to do that for an evening of shows. So that's my beef with equity. Dang it.
I am not a union person.
Well, I mean,
when it comes to the arts, necessarily.
Does that include film?
Unless it's my union, then I'm for it.
Is that the Directors Guild?
Producers Guild? I wish. I'm in the Producers Guild, but that's not really a union. It's more of a trade guild.
Well, so is SAG.
Yeah. Well, what people don't realize is really the folks benefiting are the ones that are making the top money in SAG. I mean, most actors, have 5 jobs.
Yeah.
There's only 1% that actually make over $30,000 a year.
Yep. Yeah, trust me. I've been SAG for, I think, 22, 23 years. I've yet to qualify for healthcare. But to each his own. But we digress away from playwriting. All right, so you got so how was that process as far as recasting goes?
Difficult because of the age of the actor that we needed.
Did you just go to agents? Did you just post on Actors Access? Did you post on casting networks?
I actually went to Beth Hogan over at the Odyssey Theatre, who has a lot of contacts, and she ended up referring folks, and then the guy we picked, Gerald Larson, turned out to be somebody that I knew from way back and who I had mutual friends around. So it just happened organically, thankfully.
And he came on board when?
He came on board about a week ago. So I think Tuesday of this week. So he's only had the script for about 4 or 5 days now.
How far up to speed is he, having just come on board?
I think he's pretty well ahead. However, he's older. He has problems with his eyesight, and so I printed out a script for him in large type. It was like 200 pages, so that he could act. But he's a great actor, and I remember going to play his like 30 years ago and coming out the theater saying, "Oh my God, this guy is amazing. I could never be like that." I was envious about how great he was, and now he's in my play.
How's that been, having somebody that you looked up to come on board and
I'm taller than him now, so it's like I'm looking down, but I still look up to him because he's a great craftsman, and he's, I think, made art his primary focus throughout his life, and I admire folks that do that.
Have you learned anything from him, having him come on board?
I've learned that every actor has a different take on a character, and Daryl is focusing on the religious aspect of the character he's playing, which is Bobby. And I admire that, and I learned from that because sometimes making those choices are very important, and so that the audience gets a clearer perspective on what is this character all about? What is motivating? What is the goal? And I feel like with Daryl's experience in the theater, he brought that to light more and has affected, the vibe and the lines a little bit here and there.
How much have those choices affected the actor who's playing Dennis?
I think it was very difficult for Alan, who was playing Dennis in the beginning, because he had been working with Eric, not only in rehearsals, but I think on FaceTime a lot. They were rehearsing every day for 3 hours, and
wow.
I think it was very difficult for Alan at first, but he's now come to accept that. And I admire that, and I'm so appreciative of Alan.
And the actor that's playing Bobby, remind me his name again.
Daryl.
So Daryl, you mentioned he's leaning more into the religious aspect of the character.
Because his character wants to go to heaven.
How prominent is that in the script, just out of curiosity?
It's fairly prominent, but it's just as prominent as some other issues that we're dealing with, such as violence, whether or not preemptive violence is justified, whether violence in any sense is justified. And the issue of religion comes up too, because one brother is an atheist and one brother is religious. They both grew up in the church, but the church for them wasn't anything that they ever really internalized back then.
Right, sure. When you sat down to did you already know the themes that you wanted to tackle?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I felt it was very important to discuss the issue of preemptive violence, because even though the United States has engaged in that before, for the first time it was made public that they were doing so was when we were in the Second Gulf War, and Bush and Cheney for a whole year went around and convinced the American public that we had to act preemptively. And I thought that was a turning point and something that we haven't talked about or thought about as much as we need to.
Sure. Which again goes to because of the prominence and importance of those topics. I'm still fascinated that you didn't go into a longer play. On that note, as a one act, how long is it?
It's 77 pages now. There's some long beats here and there, so I want to make it no more than 120. So
right.
An hour and 20 minutes. I think after that, it's going to be difficult for folks to sit still, older folks.
Sure, yeah. So it's basically a longer one act, so lengthwise, because I think most people, when they hear one act, they're thinking like something 30 minutes or less. So it's a longer one act.
But it's sort of, it's a psychological drama with thriller aspects, so you're kind of on the edge of your seat most of the time.
Sure. How's the pacing?
Pacing, I think, is quite good. I started writing it from the perspective of wanting no boredom. So whenever I feel some boredom while I'm directing it and hearing it, we adjust it.
Does that adjust the pace, or is that adjusting the dialogue?
Most of the time it's adjusting the pacing and then cutting dialogue as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you approach your pacing on the page? What does that look like? Is it quick, witty dialogue? Not witty necessarily, because there's nothing. I don't know if there's a lot of wit in this subject matter.
There is. I've been complimented from those who have seen the play and table reads about the dialogue, so grateful for that. And I have it in my head, sort of, because I've been living with these characters now in the way that they're incarnated now for a couple years. So that part of it, although it changes slightly here and there after I hear it in rehearsal, it isn't all that challenging for me.
So are you channeling a little bit of Mamet in there in that regard?
Well, I think he definitely was someone who I wanted to emulate in a sense, but you can't copy someone. You have to bring your own voice to it. But I would say that when it was in its pre-written stage, I was thinking about, well, what style do I want this to be in? And he was probably the one that I was hoping it would be most like.
So in that regard, are there any other challenges that you found that you had to overcome? Obviously, there's been a few, but as a first-time playwright, whether that's from a writing aspect, a producing aspect, any other challenges that you've had to overcome?
mostly the challenges have been with the production aspect, and I won't do this again where I'm the primary producer, director, and writer. It's just
Okay, you do a lot of hats.
yes, but I think that happens a lot when you're a first timer.
Sure.
So that has been the most challenging, just trying to do everything in a day and then keep a day job and do all this, juggling all these different things has been at times very overwhelming.
It is a lot. It is a lot. Outside of Parallel Process, what are you working on now?
Well, I'm doing a film with Angel Studios called Pocket of Hope.
Okay.
And that'll be my first directing of a film.
Congrats.
And right now we're just developing the script, polishing it up, and we should have that hopefully done in about a month.
Are you going to tackle another play?
I would love to.
Any ideas that you're throwing around in your head?
I had an idea about doing a play about an intermediate day class acting in Los Angeles. There's a gal named Tanya Gardner who is one of my producers, and she's actually acting the play. I ran this past her, and she thought it was a good idea, so we were thinking
That'd be
about
fun.
doing that. Yeah.
Nice. Where can people find your work?
They can go to IMDb and look up David Kohner Zuckerman and see all the films I've been involved with. And they can also email me at dkzfilms@gmail.com if they're interested in Parallel Process. We're doing a showing on the 20th September, which is the second night, and that showing is free for veterans. So if veterans want to come on Saturday night, they just email me beforehand and we get them a seat.
Which space are you in?
We are in Theater 3 at the Odyssey.
And that's 100 and something seats?
It's about 92 seats.
92, okay.
And that we open on 9/19, which is Friday night, and then we run for 6 weeks.
And we'll definitely be including the ticket link in the show notes for this episode. And we should be, this episode should drop before you guys
I hope so.
before you guys open. So, and then finally, are you on the socials?
We are on Instagram. I think it's Parallel Process the Play, and we have a website, parallelprocesstheplay.com.
Okay.
I think we have a Facebook page as well. I leave that up to the younger folks.
Sure.
And by younger, I mean anybody like younger than 50.
Okay, fair enough. And then on that note, I'm guessing by that comment that you yourself are not on the socials.
I do have one, but I prefer not to.
That you prefer not to share, you prefer not to be on it.
I just think it's important sometimes for business reasons.
I'm right there with you. I'd rather not be on it as well. So, but David Kohner's. I'm gonna forgive me because I'm afraid that I'm gonna botch. It's Kohner. Is it Kohner?
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing it right? I'm always afraid that I'm gonna
You're right.
botch it. Well, David Kohner Zuckerman, thanks for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with your friends. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.